Borsai. I'm the moderator for this panel. I am a music manager. I manage Wynonna Judd. Nothing says cryptocurrency like country music. I also do music and IP licensing for companies like Zynga and Shazam. And in 2013, I became an advisor to Ripple. I also did the Ethereum presale in 2014 and kind of continue to advise to companies. The emergence of kind of blockchain and music has been kind of moving incredibly fast, and I'm happy to say that everyone on this panel is one of my friends, and I want them to take a minute to introduce themselves. Why don't we start with you, Angela?
Hi, I'm Angela Absher, friend of Les's. Happy to be in that category, thank you. I am a music lawyer by education, and my career has taken me through some really interesting music projects. I was around when Sound Exchange started, and the United States finally agreed to pay a performance royalty. So that was one of my pet projects. I am a hardcore advocate for music and musicians, and that we should pay for art. So I didn't make a lot of money with that position. So I moved into other things and have done a lot of work in the space, including gaming, which led me into blockchain technology. So I'm not at this panel as someone who is blockchain music, but music and blockchain and how, separately, and then thinking about how that all comes together. So there's lots more time to get into that, but happy to be here.
My name's Stewart. I'm also a friend of Les's, I'm happy to say. And he's much more than a music manager or a Ripple Ethereum guy. I mean, Les is a 100% human being, so. Les Borsai. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Vest. My background is in music. I started managing Stone Temple Pilots in 1990 and handled them for 10 years. Made 5 records and sold maybe 30 million units with them. Met Matt during that time frame back in the day, and started a company called Vest that is what we call a crowd-funded micro-publishing platform that allows artists to put up fractions of their songs for sale to the general public. So if they want to put up 1% to 100% of a song and make that available for sale, they can collect the money. There are reversion terms. They can get their rights back at some point, but it takes them away from the silos of labels and publishers that have traditionally been the gatekeepers in this space and have taken a lot of money out of artists' hands and not contributed to them connecting with their fan base in many, many ways, which we hope to do with this platform best.
My name is Matt Sorum, musician, Grammy Award-winning Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductee of the band Guns N' Roses. I was also in a group called Velvet Revolver. I played drums in a band called The Cult. And I'm now the co-founder of ArtBit, which will launch at South by Southwest next month. It's an artist space that's going to be on the blockchain and be able to monetize your intellectual property, and content creators as well will be able to monetize their intellectual property. So we're going to be down there. If anyone's at South by Southwest, stop by. And I'm very happy to be here today to talk to you all. Thanks for being up on a Sunday. It's a little early for a rock and roller like me, but now I'm in the tech space, so I got to get weird and work on Sundays. That's cool.
How's it going? My name is Michael George. I work at SB Projects with Scooter Braun. We manage the likes of Ariana Grande, Justin Bieber, Kanye West. I discovered and signed Martin Garrix 5 years ago and helped build his career. Also manage and look after a kid named Eden, singer-songwriter out of Dublin. You know, my entire life in the music industry for the last 14 years I've watched disruption the entire time. So, you know, watching blockchain come in and try to disrupt the finance world, you know, it only made sense that it was going to eventually try to bleed into the music industry. And since we are the slowest to probably accept change, you know, I guess we'll see what happens.
And further to point, Michael's absolutely down the rabbit hole. He literally emails me daily with new cryptocurrency opportunities. So, so let's go with that line of questioning that you just brought up. You know, I was at MCA Records in the early 90s when Sean Fanning and Sean Parker came in with Napster. And our knee-jerk reaction, not mine specifically, but the company's knee-jerk reaction was kind of fuck innovation, we don't want to do this. We don't know how we're going to make money from it. I know today that the record companies haven't really embraced blockchain yet, because I know a lot of the guys running it. So what's your experience with the record companies and blockchain, and how do we change their perception and kind of move forward to embrace innovation? And Steve, why don't you start with that?
Well, getting record companies to do anything less, as you know, is a joke. I think there's some guilt, though. They feel like they missed out with Napster, and from what I've seen, they're all buying into stuff. I mean, look, 30% of Spotify is owned by the labels. So don't let them fool you. They have a very deep vested interest in that platform. There's actually a non-compete in their contract, which doesn't allow Spotify to act as a label, which is kind of hamstringing that platform because of the ownership. And as you may know, when monies are collected, those label partners are paid as K1 partnership partners, not as artist royalties. So the artists get 0.0005 or whatever that percentage is per stream, while these partners, as owners of the company, are taking billions of dollars off the table as K1 tax income. How do we get labels to turn around and embrace this stuff? I think it's going to take a third party to really disrupt this space. I think there are a million more times artists than there are label executives. When those artists are empowered and they start to figure out what they have, which is the creative juice behind where all this money's coming from, the labels will have to take notice. I mean, you've got guys like Chance the Rapper. You have a lot of artists that are independently out there making money without these existing structures in place on their own terms, their own rights, their own monetization, ways to do this stuff that are disruptive and direct to their consumer base, which the labels are gatekeepers. They don't want to have that connection, right? Try to get your customers' information from a label, right? If Matt sells 4 million VR records and he wants to touch some of those people in Cleveland because they're touring in Cleveland, the label's not going to tell him who bought those records. Why is that, right? Why should the label keep from you your customers' information, right? You created those songs. You wrote those songs. That's your creativity out there earning the money. Why shouldn't him, make more money than the labels? But that's not how it is. And until there's some disruption, until a bunch of artists get together and do this the right way, I don't think they're going to even pay attention.
So let's talk about artist disruption and giving the power back to the artists. I know for a fact that a lot of the bigger managers, and Michael, you can answer this question, are apprehensive to kind of engage in cryptocurrency initiatives and blockchain initiatives because they don't want their artists to be guinea pigs. And Matt and Michael, you can both answer this question. How do we get artists to step out and take the first steps with these new technologies where, look, right now Bjork, Imogen Heap, and RAC are the only artists I know that have done anything in terms of releasing content on the blockchain. How do we, empower artists to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough because as an artist, you probably have your rights bought up and owned by different people. So you have your label or your publisher and so on to try to get them to go and do something that involves blockchain or cryptocurrency would be getting buy-in from all those different people. So it really needs a perfect storm of either having enough leverage to be able to tell those different partners, like, this is what we're going to be doing, or they need to not have those affiliations at all and be independent, like a Chance, et cetera. But I think it also would take it takes an artist who is interested and believes in the space and wants to try something new and innovate to really push the envelope and do that.
Yeah, if you look at Imogen Heap and what she's done on the blockchain, when she releases her songs, if she's got a co-write, on the blockchain, the data would be able to split those publishing rights instantly without having to go through a paper trail of the publisher and all the people in the ivory tower that have the position of pushing paper. So that's something that they pay on a quarterly or biannually basis, right? This can happen instantaneously and go into your wallet. So as a new artist, when we talk about artists that are already signed to major labels and have these deals, which because the music business screwed up, they sign now what they call 360 deals and allow themselves to now take our touring revenue and our merchandise and our first baby because they decided they were going to give away our songs on iTunes and we were going to make 9 cents for a download, which makes absolutely no sense when it's a digital file. And why is the label making $5 because they ship them the digital download on an MP3 that sounds like crap? And when the artist created it on a WAV file, and the audio that we wanted to be great. And guys like Jay-Z come along and say, with his elitist group of hierarchy, and say, now we're gonna bless you with our WAV file on Tidal. And, you know, I'm like, bullshit. So I don't believe in the fact that the label's gonna come along and try to take half of my earnings on the road, because they're not riding on the tour bus in a bunk for 12 hours a night. But they decide, because they screwed up by giving away our music, that they're gonna take all of our money as a new artist. So you don't have any rights. And so as a new artist coming in on the blockchain, you can completely control your intellectual property. You can see where your publishing money's going, and the community and the consensus, not the ivory tower that owns Spotify or the front page of Apple Music, can tell you what you're supposed to listen to. You're still being force-fed music. I don't care if you're streaming or if you're downloading on iTunes. This is all force-fed by the ivory tower.
So let's just kind of continue that with that for a second.
That's why I wore my leather jacket today, because I'm a disruptor.
So let's just continue with that. So, you know, I think it's a pretty utopian view that there's this transparency on the blockchain, and as a young artist, you can put that content up there. But, you know, transparency is something that the labels and publishers, you know, try to avoid. So let's take it a step further. When we start getting into consent and basic rights and co-writing, you know, those compositions at that point are not owned specifically by one artist, they're owned by multiple parties. So how do we address that? You know, because the transparency is obvious, but the consent isn't. Angela, you might want to answer that question as a music lawyer.
Well, is this on? I think that I think it's hard to know who's in the room. Does everybody have a fundamental understanding of music rights? Zero. Let's say that if I at this very moment wrote a song, sang a song, hummed a song to you right now, there would be 9 rights associated, right? Is that like 9 rights?
I wasn't counting, but sure.
But there's a right that goes to every person along the way, whether you perform it, whether you wrote it, whether you wrote the music or the lyrics. I mean, so if you add a second person, now we're up to 18. And how many people collaborate on your records? One song. There are so many rights that we have to work on distribution, right? And everybody has to say, yeah, okay, we're going to do a thing with that song now, or we're going to do a thing with that recording now. Can you imagine? So we're in a conversation right now about the blockchain and how the blockchain is going to help music. Music is such a mess before the blockchain that it's like solving a problem that's already, that isn't even, I mean, it's still such a mess. So the question is,
how does the blockchain make the
part that makes it really awesome, if we can figure out some stuff before that, is that there is a smart contract that can, assuming it's on Ethereum, a smart contract that can be created that will automatically assign where all of those pieces of the pie go instantly, and then you never really have to look at that again. If somebody just decides to assign rights, that's another question, but everybody can get their rights automatically.
Okay, so without a centralized database to find ownership at this point, how does the blockchain solve that problem? Because that's just another step in terms of assigning and granting rights. We don't have a place that we can even identify them. Does the blockchain help with that?
I don't know how the blockchain, it's not the first layer of technology, right? It's going to have to go through some sort of a mapping technology, and then it'll be, I mean, these are the issues, right? I mean, how does it?
Steve, you want to touch on that as a manager?
Les, did you just stump an attorney? Come on, man. Listen, I think blockchain is probably oversold at this point. I think the promise is there, but this is like the internet in 1990, right? It's going to be everything for everybody. You're going to fly around in a jet car. It's not quite what's happening. I mean, we're in the middle of building a product based on blockchain, but we're learning that the expense and the time that's involved are still exorbitant, right? The transactional times aren't up to where they should be. If you're trying to buy Bitcoin and put a transaction through, it could take you 5-6 hours. It could take you a day to get a Bitcoin transaction through. That's not going to work in a consumer model, right? The cost, we're talking about $5 to $8 for each account, which isn't scalable on our platform. So there's a way to incorporate blockchain technology down the road in a very efficient manner, but it takes a little bit of tweaking from what you think is the holy grail right now. There isn't an actual solution that works at that scale or velocity at this point in time, and that's why it's so hard for her to answer this question, because, yeah, it is what you said. But I'm saying in music, you're going to have transaction speed. You're going to have efficiencies, because not everybody's putting in $100 or $1,000. People are going to come in with $1, right? And music is an upside-down value prop, right? You're getting a song for 99 cents on iTunes. Why are you paying $15 for a book, $25 for a movie? $300 for a ticket.
$360 deal, that's why.
$360 for Matt, right? Music is something that your favorite song you might listen to 10,000 times in your lifetime. You hear that song, it inspires you, it means something to you, it stays with you generation after generation after generation. That book sits on the shelf after you've read it 3 times. That DVD or that movie that you own, you might watch 3 or 4 times. That song means something viscerally to you, but it's valued at 99 cents. There's something wrong with that, right? And we're here to change that.
I mean, just to give you guys like kind of a glimpse into how complicated things are on the music industry side, I'm like constantly fielding emails about clearing or licensing songs that we have where they don't know the rest of the writers of the song, the rest of the producers of the song, how to reach those people, who publishes them, and so on, and it makes it physically impossible to clear that song. So the best song for that commercial, that sync, whatever, can no longer be used because they just can't get the ball across the line. They have to go use something that's similar or different, and then people miss out on money, which is like, you know,
So
the main thing we're talking
with a
about.
lot of the artists that you manage, which are EDM artists, there's more of an process of owning your own copyrights and owning your own music. Are your EDM artists coming to you and asking about cryptocurrencies and the blockchain yet?
No. I mean, the artists I work with are 21 and 22, so.
But that's kind of the age.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I think honestly, they're just so focused on touring and writing music. They're not. They're like, you know, they're the world of blockchain to them. Even though they are some of the biggest nerds that I know, it's kind of all they're hearing about is the speculative market and not really the technology behind it. You know, their free time is spent writing and producing records.
I think that's a question a couple of questions ago was, what are we going to do? And I think it's really about education. That's where the opportunity is right there, right? I mean, what historically and legacy products and legacy libraries, unless somebody owns their entire library, which a few people do, but that's the demographic right there, right? That's the opportunity. And we'll spend the rest of our lives trying to figure out how to get what's already been created on the blockchain. The opportunity is to what's coming next, I think.
Okay, we're going to switch gears for a second. You know, there's been a lot of talk about security and utility tokens, and this is a question for Steve. You went out and you did a pre-sale, you did a crowd sale. What you're talking about theoretically has a dividend component in a way, and in my opinion leans more like a security. Why don't you talk about your process and your decisions, because the goal line has already moved since you did your pre-sale.
Thanks, Les. You're setting me up. So we did what's called a token generating event for any attorneys in the room. We call it an ICO, but you can't say that word. We did under what's called an SEC Reg D 506B, which is a subparagraph B that allows the investor, or the token buyer, let's call them, to verify that they're accredited. And we use what's called a PPM, or private placement memorandum, and a SAFT. Those tools are usable when you consider something as a security. Our attorneys advised us it was best to consider the U.S. private sale, pre-sale, as a security, so we papered everything up to do that properly. We did a public offshore, a non-U.S. Public sale, and then we closed that in December, and we were listed on an exchange, 2 exchanges actually, by January 12th. So we did in about 6 to 8 weeks what most companies do going public over 6 to 8 years. This process of a token generating event is basically compressing an initial public offering from 6 years to 6 weeks. There's a window that's closing, there's regulation that's coming, not that it's unwarranted, but we took advantage of the ecosystem at the time. We acted very quickly, we were able to execute and fund our company for probably 3 to 4 years of runway at this point. But it is getting more expensive and more time consuming to do what we just did. So as far as securities versus utilities, the big debate, I'm not sure if you guys are that deep in it, but whether a token, which is what you receive in exchange for your buy-in, Where in a normal VC raise, you were exchanging equity in the company, so actual stock for dollars. In a token generating event, you're exchanging tokens for dollars. Technically, once you deliver the token and someone's paid you, that's the end of that transaction. In stock or in a traditional equity raise, you get a piece of equity in return for that investment, but that equity is going to go up and down based on the value of the company. So there's an ongoing relationship. With tokens, there's technically no ongoing relationship. The SEC is concerned that some tokens may act as a security. They may act as an equity piece. In our platform, we're careful to call it a utility token because you can actually use it to operate on the platform and buy song rights directly with the token. It's a very important distinction. Now, can you complain that, oh, there's a royalty attached to the song, so it's speculative? Our answer is that if you own something, you should have the right to sell that. So if I own a 68 Camaro and I want to sell that to this lady right here, and I want $10,000 for my Camaro and she agrees to buy it, I can sell that car. Is that a security? I don't know. Will that car appreciate in value because it's a classic? Probably so. But she's not buying it ostensibly because of that increase in value. She's buying it because she wants to own an asset that I have. So if I'm a writer or a player or a producer, and I own a piece of a song, and I want to sell that piece of that song, I should have the right to transact that any way I wish. Music publishers do this all day long. They buy huge catalogs for a lot of dollars, and they own those catalogs and exploit them and earn money from them. Is that a security? At this point, it's not. So in our lawyer's legal opinion, we're operating as a utility and not a security.
Until the SEC changes the goal line again.
Goalposts are changed all the time.
Further to that, ICOs and pre-sales have become a really interesting way for companies, individuals to go out and raise money. There is a kind of thought process with artists that they can go out and raise money for their own businesses. The problem that I see as a manager, wearing two hats, is the blockchain doesn't solve distribution, it doesn't solve artist development, it doesn't solve promotion, sales, streaming. How do we get the benefit of being able to raise money through ICOs and pre-sales and figure out how to do the other part as well? Either Matt or Michael should answer that.
Well, as you saw, Bjork with the block pool, she's getting a lot of PR from that. So people, she's one of the first people to come on with that kind of an idea as a major artist, and to be able to sell a piece of what she's doing with the cryptocurrency, and it's going to be a really interesting space to watch. But the idea of Vest and being able to, as a new artist especially, to get on board and have the theory of blockchain and the consensus. When I say the community can decide, right? Like I said about iTunes or Apple Music or any of those things where you're still being force-fed by the ivory tower, when you see the front page as a hot list or these things, that's all decided by the people over at Apple that are tied to the labels and the politics that goes with that. So the community of the world that goes to Spotify or to Apple or any of those things are still being force-fed music is my point. Now the idea of blockchain and the consensus will be the community rising the best stuff up to the top. As an idea, it's there. Will it be mom and pop? Will it be that user-friendly? These things are going to take time. Like when we first saw Napster and it was a bunch of squiggly little lines and no one could figure out how to download and what was that. And then the MP3 player came, and then Steve Jobs came along and grabbed it and said, I'm going to create iTunes. And when I first made records, there was no digital component in my record agreement. There was nothing that said anything about digital. We were like, what's that? And then someone just said, oh, don't worry about it, it'll be on the internet. And that's how it went down for artists. They just kind of threw it in there. And now the conversation of blockchain, artists, what's blockchain? The world's asking, what is blockchain? But we're having the same conversation we had when the internet first started and when Napster first appeared. So this is a new paradigm. And we have to, disrupt, once again, the music business is archaic in their thinking, and they're going to miss the boat. Yesterday on the panel, a very good friend of mine was here from Universal Music Publishing, who controls the largest music catalog in the world. But he was at least here with an open mind and willing to listen to the new ideas. And that, I thought, was a very good sign that they need to listen, because they never have. And then all they are worried about is their annual check that they get so they can live out in Malibu on the beach. And So as an artist, I want to bring the community of new artists and give them a real chance. Not this idea that they're going to go on YouTube and put up 1 million views on YouTube and get paid $1,000 while YouTube reaps the benefits and puts a commercial like McDonald's in front of you, and they've already got a check from McDonald's before they're going to pay you your measly $1,000. And you're, at the end of the day, you're going to make the same amount as a McDonald's employee, so you might as well be serving burgers. So new artists don't stand a chance. Where do they go? This gives me hope. The blockchain community and the idea that new artists can come here and thrive now, especially with the cryptocurrency element that could give them coins today. So that excites me.
I guess I'm a little bit, I'm not necessarily sure I see the promotional aspect of blockchain in regards to breaking new artists. Like, I don't really see that component. I see how it applies to rights management. I see how it applies to potentially crowdfunding and for an artist instead of going through Kickstarter or using someone in the ivory tower to cut you that check. But the artists that I work with that I've broken over the last 5 years, these are kids who actually are just putting music out on the internet, and as crazy as it does seem, yes, you have all the stuff that's being force-fed to us through Top 40 Radio and Spotify playlists and Apple Music playlists, but Eden, for example, an artist I work with who we just did 40,000 tickets on this upcoming tour. This is a kid who literally, somebody on YouTube found his music, put it on a channel that they run. Yeah, he made no money off that, but it spiraled into a fan base, and that was kind of it. I don't necessarily
say those YouTube views are real, though, because that system's corrupted.
Well, the fans that come to the shows are real, and I know they're coming from YouTube because that's the only place that it's coming from.
The thing about the blockchain is the data is real and it's transparent. So the corruption of YouTube, you can buy views. Anybody could go out and buy as many views as they want. It comes from, there's a guy that will contact you probably on your Facebook, and he's from usually India or some other country that's actually saying, hey, I'm going to sell you a bunch of views. So now these untalented people rise to the top because they have enough money to buy views. I'm not saying your guy's untalented, but I'd like the consensus of the world to say what real talent is. Like, I asked my friend at Universal Publishing one time, I said, if Prince came in and played guitar right now and stood in front of you and sang Purple Rain, and he didn't have any views on YouTube, would you sign him? He said, probably not. Because the first thing a record company guy or a manager like this asks is, how many social media followers do you have? That's the first thing they ask. They don't ask about your talent, right? That's discouraging for me, right? Where's the real art? And then somebody like Adele comes out and sells 30 million records. People go, oh my God, she still sold 30 million. Why? Because she was relatable. And all of a sudden, she was real. She sang a vocal without auto-tune on it, right? And everyone goes, wow, that's so interesting. There's no auto-tune. You can actually hear that she's a little bit out of tune right there, right? When everything else is homogenized. So I come from, when we made records on vinyl, right?
Matt, tell us how you really feel about all this.
When we made vinyl, which was a work of art, right? A work of art. The cover had art on it. Now, I'm very excited to know that the market of vinyl has come back to almost 12% of the share of the recording industry, because that is a piece of art, right? So now we have to figure out how to bring art back to the community, real art.
Okay, we have about 6 minutes left. Why don't we see if there's some questions? And there are. Michael, go ahead.
So we've talked about music rights, but in terms of the blockchain relative to merchandising and ticketing, any thoughts along those lines?
Any one of you can answer. Yeah, I mean, I think blockchain and ticketing is really interesting. I think it would potentially, it could. The only problem for me I see is like, all right, the gatekeeper is Ticketmaster and Live Nation and AEG, et cetera. So what would incentivize them to create something decentralized that would not, so maybe if they created something that was centralized or a private blockchain application, that can make sense for them so they can control the secondary market and so on. But other than that, I don't see it.
You're still talking about Live Nation and AEG and all those ivory tower assholes, right?
But if they own the venues,
you're a young man, but when I used to tour the world, right? I used to go from country to country. Every promoter was independent. before Live Nation came along and swooped everything up and told. Yes.
Yeah, but
And so what I'm saying is now going back to the new artists, when they don't buy into the ivory tower of Live Nation, AEG, and all these other guys, right? It's still doable with the blockchain because the information is there, right? It can be. Not today, but it will be.
But Matt, in all fairness, you know, I worked with a lot of developing artists, you know, as a concert promoter at an early incarnation of Live Nation. And the truth is, the thing, you know, that stemmed our business is we looked for those artists to cross over and become part of the machine, whether you like it or not. That's what we were buying. Look, your tours in particular, no offense, you're getting booked by Live Nation and AEG, and you're part of that.
I know.
Hypocrisy. You're part
because
of that.
they wrote me a big fat
hypocrisy.
check in advance.
Well, that's exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly
and
right.
we took the money. Why? Because we're all greedy.
So, all right, let's get another question. Go ahead.
Particular order I want this to go in. Matt, I want you to answer this first, and Michael, I want you to go immediately after. So, could the use of a blockchain application mitigate the disparity in bargaining power between musicians and record labels? And if yes, then how?
Well, we're going new artists again, right? If some people like Bjork are going to come over and discover that they can have an instant connection with their fan base, right? You got to remember, when I signed my first record deal, the record company was very kind to give me 12 points when they received 88. And that's after we paid the light bill, the video cost, and the production of the record, okay? That's when we made the vinyl thing, okay? But now, I believe the new artists can have that direct access. Yes, the machine is there, the machine, right? And they're going to gravitate to the new artists because when they rise up, they always come, the machine. But I truly believe they can have that connection, yes, on the blockchain.
So I think that for your question is pretty interesting because why, if blockchain applications all work out and all these dreams that we're talking about now, which they probably will in some capacity work out, why would we need more bargaining power with them? They're essentially just a bank, right? So they fund. Look, I work on projects right now where we took a check from them just to take a check, and my office and the staff that we have did all the work to help do the marketing, and we identified shortcomings in the labels, and we filled those gaps with other people that we liked, but it was really, we used their resources and their money as the fuel to fuel the project, just like a crowd sale or ICO you would do to fuel, give yourself money to run the project. So I'm really not sure how. Yeah, it would provide more bargaining power if we could totally show them, look, this is all the data that we're owning. This is exactly who our marketplace is. We don't really need you for this. We're going to use you for that. But we kind of already have a lot of that now.
Yeah, they're gonna offer you instead of 360, they're gonna be kind enough to only take 25% of it. Yeah, and they're only gonna want 25% of your merch and 25% of your touring. So you'll have a little bit of bargaining power because you've got, what they do in the record business now is they jump on what we call a fast-moving train with a tail, and they basically just grab the tail and they hold on. And I actually got this from the horse's mouth, a very higher up friend of mine that actually just been fired from Columbia Records, and I won't name his name, but I said, Matt, you know what's going, he said, you know what's going on over here? The train's moving by, and if it's got a tail hanging off, we grab on, and then we just ride.
It's my job to make the train run,
The
and then
manager.
they grab onto the fucking tail.
And we pay him 15% because he's really good.
Not at Scooter
And
Braun,
smart.
you don't.
And we could just create. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to just create.
Where do you see this technology and specific vertical use case affecting the where do you see that going? Did you hear the question?
Say that again, but speak.
Where do you see this vertical this technology be used in emerging markets, and is that something you are focusing on?
You talking about blockchain technology in global markets, or what do you mean by emerging markets? Okay. Well, one, you've got major territories. We met with a gentleman from Nigeria, right? Guess what? They don't have a PRO. It's a performing rights organization in Nigeria, which is the second biggest economy in Africa. That means every artist in Africa, in Nigeria, cannot collect money on their art. It's shocking, right? So there are plenty of places, even in the developed territories, where songs aren't registered properly, the writers aren't put in properly, and there's what we call black box. This is a dirty secret of the music business. All the money goes in there and no one knows where it goes and where it's accounted to. And maybe if you're lucky and you have someone on your case like an attorney or a manager that's looking after you, or you're an artist that's astute and can take care of yourself, you can collect those monies. But hopefully, the hope is that this technology allows transparency, it allows efficiencies to be made where artists can collect the monies they're due. That's not happening right now, right? There's nothing that says it can't be happening right now, but there's politics, there's money, there's greed. The labels don't want transparency. The PROs don't want transparency. If you're raking in $4 billion a year and you get to hold that money for a year before you have to pay that back out, do you want someone coming in and doing an audit? No. Why would you want that, right? It hurts your own business model. So yeah, the promise is there. The emerging markets are huge because they have less political walls to break down. Like doing something here in the US, I mean, Irving did this GMR, PRO on his own because he realized he could be more efficient for his artists, and now it's become one of the leading PROs in this country. But undeveloped countries that don't have those resources or infrastructures, hopefully this brings some promise.
The only thing, we are way out of time, but I do want to say that what's really cool about the blockchain and the music industry is that of all of the industries that have a real shot, it's the industries that have a really passionate community. And that, I think, is where the opportunity is for this industry to make a difference, is because across the board, you're passionate, whether you're a performer or a consumer or anywhere in the middle, you're here because you love music, and that's really what it's going to, I mean, the blockchain relies on communities in order for it to be done right. So I think there's a great opportunity.
Let's thank the panel for the time.